Okay, story time. So I woke up yesterday morning and I clearly remember I had completely different plans on this week's podcast. And I was just planning for it. I started writing my script, I was in touch with my guest. Everything was working fine and as planned. But then something happened. Something struck me really hard. You know what? I looked at the date, and the date was 10th of December 2020. And I just wondered, man, the year is almost over. And I just looked back at my podcasting journey, and I just thought of the whole time that how Socially Desi began for me, how the whole journey of the Socially Desi show actually began back in April this year. And to be very frank, I've spoken this earlier on my podcast as well, that the Socially Desi show was never intended to be a podcast. It was always imagined and curated as a YouTube channel. I wanted it to be like a proper video talk show, where I'll be there, I'll have guests and we'll interview them, we'll have a good setup, we'll have a good YouTube studio. And everything was planned until March 2020 when everything just stopped. Everything stopped. And this made me wonder, you know. As I was sipping my favorite cup of tea, I just thought, I'm not the only one, who started his podcast during this pandemic. And I'm sure a lot of podcasters out there in the community would have had so many different experiences that a lot of people may not know about. And that's when I came about this idea for the episode. This episode was never planned. This episode happened because of each and every guest on the podcast today, each and every person whom I was not able to interview on this particular episode, but I really apologize for not accommodating the others on this episode. But definitely, there's going to be a part two of this episode where I will be covering a lot many guests. I was really overwhelmed with the kind of response I got in the morning when I, started interacting in these WhatsApp groups and other community groups. And I just asked, whether, somebody wants to come and join me on the podcast and discuss about their journey, discuss about their challenges. And there were three major things that I am going to ask each one of these guests on the podcast today. Number one is, why did they start their podcast? So that's really interesting. For me, why did I start my podcast? Because I wanted my voice to be heard. I wanted a medium where I can showcase my talent, showcase the stories, showcase each and every categories that I'm actually talking about on sociallydesi.com, and showcase, these problems, these strategies that my guests, the experts that come on the show, they share with my audience, and in totality, share an experience with the audience. Uh, which is not easily found on YouTube or any other platform. That's how, I started a podcast. Yes, it was not intended to be a podcast, but then, starting with audio is not bad, right? And, once you start hearing all the guests today, you'll come to know that, yes, podcasting for a lot of them was easier than starting a YouTube channel. And that's true. That's true for a lot of us because it's easier for us to sit at home. You can be just lying in your bed and you can just hit record on your mobile and do a podcast episode. You know, and it's so personal. Podcasting is so personal that the kind of interaction that you can have with your audience, the kind of engagement that you can have with your audience is unparalleled with any other medium. This is what I feel, and I'm sure a lot of my guests on the show feel the same way. The second question that we focused on this particular episode was, how is it going for them? What is their journey like? How has this whole year been for them so far? What has happened in their podcast? So, a short burst on what went right, what went wrong in their podcasting journey so far. So that was the second most important thing. And for Socially Desi, it has been a really good year in terms of we trying to find our voice, we trying to find our audience, our expertise, our niche in the market. It has been a good year for Socially Desi. And I'm glad that the audience and every one of you listening out there have been so receptive of our thoughts, our discussions, our point of view when it comes to any particular topic that we discuss on the episode. So thank you very much on that. And the third question that we asked was what were the challenges that they faced, and if there are any challenges that they are still facing. So, top three challenges that these podcasters, the guests on the show, are facing with their podcast. And you will be surprised. You will be surprised by the challenges that a lot of the podcasters are facing. And sometimes, why I say that you'll be surprised, because sometimes, as a podcaster, you can easily relate to this thought that, sometimes we feel that we are the only ones facing this issue. Like, for example, if I'm not good at editing, right? And sometimes, you feel that why is it happening to me that I'm not able to get guests on my show while every other podcast that I listen to have guests on the show. A lot of us feel that why my podcast is not getting monetized. And guys, there are so many problems, so many challenges that every podcaster is going through, whether it's a new podcaster or a seasoned podcaster. I'm sure these challenges relate to each one of us in the podcasting community, at least. So this was really a very interesting question to ask my guests on the show today, and the answers will really, really surprise you, and they'll actually make you think a lot about, that you're not the only one facing these kind of problems. So don't beat yourself on that, and keep progressing. So, with that, I don't want to take a lot of your time on this. So, let's start with today's episode. I'll get all these guests one by one on the episode. Let's hear them out. Let's see their experiences. Let's see their challenges. And yeah, enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Socially Desi Show, the podcast that motivates you to live, create, and inspire. If this is your first time here, welcome. On our show, we discuss tips and strategies with our guest speakers on how to tackle problems related to personal growth, mental health, relationships, business and entrepreneurship, and health and fitness. So hit that subscribe button and go check out our website at sociallydesi.com for more of such content. So to start things off, I have Shivam Garg with me. Shivam is my co-host for Namaste India. So Shivam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Anurag. It's glad to be back on Socially Desi, and a very big hi from my side to all the Socially Desi family. बढ़ते देखने बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है मेरे को तो kudos to you, Anurag.
Thank you so much, Shivam. And to everyone out there, Namaste India. We crossed 100K listens a few days back. So congratulations, Shivam, on that.
Thank you. Same to you, Anurag, for achieving this milestone. We have been dreaming about the same for quite a long, almost 7 months long journey, crossing 200 plus episodes, 100K plus listens. It's been tremendous.
So true, man. So true. So Shivam, why did you start your podcast?
Okay, let's be honest. Okay, I saw a meme in the morning on Tasteless Gentlemen. So there was a girl who tweets, "Why do men start podcast and not therapy?" So a guy replies to that, "Why do girls make OnlyFans account and not be loyal?" So this is something like that only. People have a misconception about this, that those who are not, able to express much in public, or those who have a lot hidden in themselves, only they start the podcast. But it is not so very true. It's a stereotype which has been broken in the recent past. Even we have broken it. So I have been into public speaking, RJ, anchoring, and stuff like that for quite a long, but I left for a while. uh, I remember back in April when you came up with this Socially Desi idea and we initiated it. Then we came up with the Namaste India idea. So the whole point of me stepping into the podcasting world was, this is something which was unexplored for me. and it is a very, very, very strong medium of reaching to a large set of audience. uh, Again, in India, yes, podcast is on its growing phase. Not too many people listen to it. But what I've experienced in the past 7, 8 months is that there's a very huge potential audience, which is, eagerly waiting for some good podcasts to come up. And I just saw that thing and I'm targeting towards that only.
And so, how is it going for you so far in the podcasting world?
Sorry?
How is it going for you so far in the podcasting world?
It's going great. It's going great. It's been an amazing journey till now. People have loved it, and I've got great responses from people, and not just responses from people. It's sort of an inner peace for myself as well. That you know, talking about certain things which I've always wanted to, communicating to people, making them aware of certain things happening in their surroundings, which is the whole idea of the podcast. So for me, it's overwhelming.
So, Shivam, Namaste India has been going on for the last 205 days and it's still counting. So, I'm sure there would be a lot of challenges that you would have faced, right? It can be with your co host. You must have faced a lot of challenges with me as well. and
So true,
and
so
with
true.
podcast, ये बताओ यार हद हो गई मेरे ही पॉडकास्ट में बताओ हद हद हो गई ऐसा
नहीं,
what sort
नहीं,
of challenges have I given you? Tell me, come on.
okay, so the biggest challenge with Anurag is uh, this is something which we both have, and then since we both have it, so like similar poles repel. So this is something which he has too, and I have too. So I somehow somewhere feel like a shit. He has it too, and that is spontaneity. So it has happened a lot many times. We have mentioned it too that sometimes it's like we are on the verge of recording for a topic and immediately we get a very recent news and we just switch over it, create a content according it on the spot, talk about it very spontaneously. So the only challenge which is somehow good and somehow bad for us as a podcast is the spontaneity part, that we pick sometimes the topics which are very, very, very recent for us, and then we create the content about them and we publish the episode on the same day. So somehow I feel there are sometimes points which are left untouched, or somehow there are some points which we do not go in too much deep so that we can provide much information. So that's one of the challenges I feel ki it happens sometimes when because there is too much information, you're not able to put forth everything together in that limited scope of time which you have decided for the episode. So this is one of the challenges I face. Another, Anurag, would be, which I faced initially and still facing, is the surrounding. So
Hmm.
the place I live in is quite noisy in the background. So it has been challenging for both me and my co-host to find a time slot where the noise cancellation is optimum. There is less noise, but at random sometimes happens. What happens is we are recording very soothy, very less noise from either of our backgrounds, and immediately मेरे पड़ोसी बजा देते हैं गाना कि दो घुट पिला दे साखिया. मैं like थोड़ी देर बाद पी लेना भाई. मेरा पॉडकास्ट हो रहा है.
So true, man.
this
Any
so
other any other challenges that you have faced in your podcasting journey so far?
uh okay, what one very quick but I guess very significant challenge which I feel most of the podcasters in their initial days face is not seeing numbers.
Hmm.
So this is somehow depressing for some people, and I guess one of the major reasons why people do start but give up soon is that they're not able to see the number. But with the course of time, eventually, gradually, we have overcome this with the help of the determination we have, the consistency we have, and the commitment we have made to beat Ekta Kapoor's record for most number of episodes. So I guess it is a very big challenge to be consistent enough towards your podcast, which we have been mentioning quite a many times. Whether it be daily, whether it be weekly, whether it be twice a month, or whatever the frequency it is, to adhere to is it in itself a challenge. So I guess that's That's all what I feel when it comes to podcasting. These are the major challenges that I have.
That's so true, Shivam. So true. I mean, I guess consistency is going to be one of the most challenging factor for every podcaster. I'm sure because
Right.
everyone is at home, everyone have their own challenges with respect to other aspects of their lives. So I'm sure this is a challenge that everyone is trying to fight. Everyone is trying to get over it. So thank you, Shivam. Thank you for taking out time and being on the Socially Desi show today.
Thank you so much, Anurag. It's always a pleasure and honor to be here. And I hope कि फिर से I get a chance to be a part of Socially Desi podcast and share my experiences. Thank you for calling me.
So next up on the show, we have my good friend Omkar. Omkar has his show which is called How's the Josh. So hey Omkar, how's the Josh?
Hey man, it's completely high. Hi sir. Hi Anurag.
Yeah, it's hi, hi. Okay, so Omkar, tell us more about your show and how did it all start for you?
All right. So House of Josh is something which here we deal with motivation. Here we deal with the real life, basically. Okay, and it started in a very beautiful way. Like back then, I was in engineering college, and I got to hear some of the podcasts. To mention few, it was
Mhm.
Rajiv Masand and Anupama Chopra, and I was writing my assignments. And I found that entire banter to be quite interesting, and I felt that somewhere that I should be hosting this intelligent chat shows, and that's how I did a bit of research. I was completely new. I was quite naive in the industry, I would say. And I sort of figured out the podcast and podcasting companies. Back then, I started with Audio Boom, and that's how I started with season one. And in this way, I entered the podcasting industry. It's a sure, I would say, I wanted to sort of copy someone or immaculate someone, I would say, in order to
Mhm.
be like them. And that's how it started. Emulate,
But
basically,
then
that's the
why a
word I'm searching
podcast?
for.
But why a podcast? Why not a YouTube channel or something else?
Because YouTube, it's like, it takes a lot of editing work, there's a shooting, then again there are a lot of resources that are involved in it, I would say. And when it comes to podcasting, it's very quick, it's very easy, and it's such a fun banter. Like Anurag, you have been doing podcasting for quite a while now, and you have done some great work in the industry as well. So I would say that don't you think that podcasting is so easy, and we reach out to the remotest area? I know, like currently we have started with this banter of reaching people to the remotest area, but definitely is reaching out to more people, and it's easy. And I would say there's less of editing work which is there, and more of intelligent talks that is there. YouTube, I think everybody just comes and hops into YouTube. But when it comes to podcasting, I think we have some selected people, and the knowledge sort of flows with a strong thread.
So true, so true. Because even I believe that when it comes to podcasting, the kind of content that you have, it triumphs over everything else. Because with YouTube, a lot of people can get away with, visual effects, or maybe, if they have a very visually interesting show or a YouTube channel, then they can get away with a very minor content quality. But when it comes to podcasts, somebody who listens to a podcast is 100% indulged in the kind of content and the conversation that you're having. So definitely the route of podcast is way different than YouTube. And yeah, it's comparatively easier to edit and publish your podcast rather than a YouTube episode. So how is it going for your particular podcast?
Yeah, like talking about House of Josh, I think I have seen the success and ups and downs and phases, I would say. So back then, in the first half of 2019, when I started, I was very naive in the industry, I would say, in this entire scenario. My first guest was
Mhm.
Komal Nata, who was the Bollywood reporter. And then I had Anisha Dixit, if I'm not wrong, as known as Riksha Wali, the famous YouTuber. And that's how I
Yeah.
started, and slowly and steadily I got into the mainstream Bollywood at Tapsi Surat. So better guests, better conversations. There was, I personally evolved through ages, I would say. And so December 2019 we sort of wrapped up with season one. And in the lockdown there was so much of before the lockdown there were so many things which were going on, and I couldn't sort of start with season two, but lockdown sort of gave me a motivation and a push to sort of start season 2. And that's how we started with season 2. And season 2, we sort of tried to add on a couple of more things, from fancy startups to some glamorous businesses. And so there's a addition of, like, Bollywood is definitely a priority, actors, actresses, singers, dancers, yes, but with that there's an addition of entrepreneurs. We have some great startups, some great ideas, business world ideas that we are discussing. Roundtable conferences is an add-on, and it's an
Mhm.
interesting conversations, intelligent conversations that we are holding right now, which are quite insightful. So if you're talking about the journey, thank God, touch wood, it's really going great. A great listenership, great quality content, and I think the listeners as well as I am evolving through the journey.
So you spoke about, highs and lows in your podcast. So what if I have to summarize top three challenges for your particular podcast? What would these three be?
All right. So, as I told you, my podcast is somewhere a glam centric podcast, I would say. So, the very first challenge that I face at times, initially, I used to face is sort of convincing the PR managers that, definitely House of Josh has that credibility that your client, that your artist can be on. We definitely have got some good, decent listenership. We have got some good guests previously. So, convincing them and making sure they schedule that artist for recording, that is the first uh, challenge that I see. Secondly, it's about the editing thing and making sure that we put it on time. That is something that I find it challenging. So talking about the third challenge, basically, is if I'm telling you about to going and watch a YouTube video, people will go to that YouTube channel, they'll click on that and they'll watch that YouTube video. But when it comes to accessing the podcast, many of them, they don't have an idea to how to unleash or how to go and access that content. So it's like you have to tell them a bit more about it, what podcasting is, because we are still in the naive stage in India, I would say. Yes, we have explored a much of it, but still we are in the naive stage. So reaching out to a larger audience is somewhere a bit challenging.
Interesting. Thanks, Omkar. Thanks for sharing your experience, these challenges that you're facing in your podcast. I'm sure, with Socially Desi also, our aim is to help a lot of new podcasters also come up and, try to figure out what sort of things are going wrong in their podcast. And we're also trying to do that with our couple of podcasts as well. We are also learning. And the whole idea is to, discuss things together, learn together, and end of the day try to figure out what works and what doesn't. So before we wind up, any message that you have for your budding podcasters out there for 2021?
All right. So my message would be that as you guys have explored the YouTube space, now definitely podcast has a greater potential. So don't hesitate to sort of go and ask questions about podcasting industry to the podcasters. Go deep dive into this industry. Try exploring and try creating podcasts, because there's so much more which is unexplored. And I think we are really looking forward to some great, I wouldn't call competitors, but some great buddies in the podcasting industry. So making sure that we have a great full-fledged fraternity out there, a podcasting full-fledged fraternity as we have it in Bollywoods and YouTubes. So just explore the podcasting industry, I would say.
So true, so true. And I'm sure a lot of podcasters and people out there would definitely start, something new, or, keep engaging and keep creating podcasts. So with
Mhm.
that, thank you, Omkar. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Anurag.
So next on the list, we have Sayasha and her podcast, which is called Podlist with Sayasha. Hi, Sayasha. Welcome to the show.
Hi, so nice to be here.
It's a pleasure having you on the show today. So, Sayasha, to our audience at Socially Desi, tell us about your podcast and what is it all about?
Sure. So my podcast is called Podless with Sasha. It's a Hubhopper original. So you know the time when YouTube exploded in the scene, where every
Mhm.
second person at a point had a YouTube channel and was trying to put up something or the other. Now I don't think podcast as a medium has gotten there yet, but it's inching closer as we speak. So the pod list was conceived because I realized that almost every other person has an aspiration to become a podcaster in some format, right?
Mhm.
So, which is
Mhm.
super great for content creators and the medium and for all the ancillary industries and services attached to it. But as an audience, especially for someone who might not be too well versed in this sphere, they could find it extremely overwhelming to sort of navigate amidst this ocean of content that already exists. So, yeah, as the name suggests, Podlist essentially is a podcast listicle, kind of like a podcast recommendation show. But, completely acknowledging that recommendations can get super subjective and personal. What I try
Yep.
to do is to look at a podcast as objectively as possible. So I ask
Mm-hmm.
myself, how unique is this podcast? Is it like a trailblazer or swimming against the tide in some way? Then the second thing I look for is, of course, the audio experience. And again, by that, I don't necessarily mean production quality. And I don't know if this will resonate, but every show has a vibe of its own. So
Yep.
deciding that gets decided by a bunch of factors of the podcast show. So I look at the vibe and the audio experience. And lastly, and this personally for me is the most important, what value is this podcast adding to the listener? Does this
Mm-hmm.
podcast content trump all else? So yeah, as the pod list, as we say, the pod list is essentially just a podcast about podcasts where we aim to bring together the best in the business, yeah, and have fun at it while we're chatting.
So true. I really like the episodes that you're doing, and the
Thank
Musafir
you.
stories were really nice. That
Thank
episode
you.
with the Musafir stories
Yeah.
was one of my favorites. So, guys,
Thank
you can check
you.
that out. It's episode number 6
Yes.
on the pod list. And how is it going for you so far with the podcast?
It's going well, yeah. It's a passion project. It's a constant
Hmm.
learning process. And when you sort of branch out in the way that I have, you realize that your wins are your own and there's no one coming to soften the blow either when you fall.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
like I said, I love talking to people. I love getting to talk to such beautiful minds. And there's just so much you can learn from people, no, by merely just conversing
Right.
with them. So, I won't deny it's divine to get mails and DMs from friends and strangers who you've never met and probably never will, saying, when they say things like a conversation you put out as an episode really struck a chord with them, or they really resonated with some views you relayed. So, needless to say, I'm super grateful for that. But genuinely, personally speaking, for me, this process is also helping me overcome my own introverted, inhibited self.
Hmm.
And that is so much more than I can even quantify, man. Like, the change I have seen in myself just over the past 5 to 6 months or so is immeasurable. Ask anyone who knew me 3 years ago, I was that person in the room who wouldn't speak unless spoken to. So today, having a podcast show of my own, I don't know, I just say I'm loving the roller coaster of ups and downs, and it's a constant learning and unlearning. And I just really hope I can continue to do so.
So when you talk about a roller coaster ride, ups and downs, so
Yeah,
if you have to summarize your top 3 challenges for
right,
Podlist and
right.
as a podcaster in general, what would these 3 be?
Right. Interesting question. So, I would say the challenges not just specific to being a podcaster, but as any sort of
Hmm.
content creator. I feel personally for me, they're the three that you're asking for that I can think of right now are all interconnected. Okay,
Yep.
so number one, I am intimidated or I'm very uncomfortable around technology. So, for instance, even an Excel sheet with lots of numbers, no, I start feeling uneasy. So, new
Hmm.
softwares and stuff like that is super hard for me. I do adapt, but anyone who knows me knows that even technology despises me. For instance, there was this joke at my previous workplace, okay, where my colleagues used to say that the IT head is my best friend. And that you'll find Sasha around him versus with the creative team where I should be. And that was absolutely true. So by that, what I mean is the editing, the post production process is a place
Hmm.
where I find myself having challenges. I love taking on the role of a creator and the producer. It's my voice, my content. I decide what stays in an episode and what doesn't. But
Hmm.
physically implementing those edits on the software isn't a place I am very okay with venturing in at the moment, because at a
Okay.
certain point you know your strengths and you know that somebody else, you should be able to acknowledge that someone else is far better than you at it. And that's where Hubhopper's team has very generously stepped in for me. So I would
Hmm.
say post production process is number one. um, the other one, again not specific to the podcast, is something that I've actually never quite accepted, let alone publicly, is that I am one of my favorite critiques. Okay, and that's a very
Okay.
nice and cushioned way to put it. It's good in some ways because you're constantly pushing yourself to do better, but it can also take a very unhealthy turn, no? Because your internal dialogues are very prejudiced. So I have
Yeah.
this tendency, and I think you might, I don't know if you'll resonate. I want things done in a particular way. And what I mean is that my standard of perfection is at a certain point, and if I can't match it, I may as well not do it. So,
Hmm.
especially when you're doing something for the first time, learning on the go, and that too doing it entirely by yourself, that combination can get quite lethal, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on a professional level, fortunately or unfortunately, not everyone you engage with will be like you. Like, I know there are a lot of people out there like me who go through this, but you don't end up working with everyone like you. So I'm constantly trying to learn how to maneuver around it.
Hmm.
So that, and well, the last thing I think I can think of is very, just putting it very short. Someone I respect very dearly very recently told me straight to my face, Sayasha, stop dipping your toes, dive. And that really hit, man. Because you might know Nikesh of Indian Noah. He was my
Hmm.
third guest on the show. Someone again I look up to because of his sheer dedication and hard work. He also very rightly pointed out quite earlier on only that I need to overcome my imposter syndrome traits that I tug around. So yeah, I
Hmm.
mean that isn't something that one can surpass in a day or a month or even your entire podcast season, but I think I'm acknowledging it. And I'm blessed with wonderful, genuine people around me, like you people. So I hope that one day I do dive. One day, I hope.
No, no, you're doing good. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Thanks,
it takes
man.
time. I mean, for
Yeah,
not for everyone. And like you said, you are an introvert by
yeah,
it. What do you say, by design or by nature?
yeah.
But I mean, yes, I mean, while speaking to you, I never felt that you're an introvert. So I guess that's a good nudge, in the right direction. So. So thank you very much, Sayasha. Thank you for being on the show today. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So next on the Socially Desi show, we have Arjun and his podcast, Madras Wala Podcast. Hi, Arjun. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Anurag. Glad to be here.
Pleasure to have you on the show today, Arjun. So tell us more about the Madras Wala Podcast.
So, Anurag, few years back, there was this casual discussion I had with a couple of my friends, and the constant refrain at that time was that television was wonderful at that time we were growing up,
Hmm.
and there's nothing to watch on TV today. So there are so many channels, and yet there is hardly anything. That kept me thinking about what was different about the time we were growing up. There were a handful of TV channels. There was Doordarshan in the first few years,
Right.
and then a couple of private channels. So there must have been something nice about the quality because the quantity was less. There was a lot of focus on quality.
Hmm.
And that kept me thinking about the TV programs. And I watched some of them again on YouTube for old time's sake. And I was completely wonderstruck because the screenplay, the performances, they were all marvelous. So the TV serials were all much smaller. Some of them were even as small as 13 episodes.
Right.
The biggest TV serial, Bunyad, was just 105 episodes, compared to what you have today, where serial goes on for 8 years.
So
So,
true.
yeah, so I started reading up, but there wasn't much available online about these serials as such. So I started tracing down old magazine articles. So I'm a journalist by profession. So this kind of work comes naturally to me. I started tracing down old magazine articles about these serials, and I thought people should know more about how these were made. And that's how I started recording the episodes for Madras Wala podcast.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. And how is it going for you so far?
It's going good. So I started it in 2018. There was a
Hmm.
gap last year. I could not record many episodes last year because of a few personal commitments I had. But this year I have again revived it. I am more regular with my work. And also because there's this community of podcasters that I have become a part of. I feel okay, there are a lot of others doing it and there is a lot of motivation in the air. So that has helped me go on with this work.
Hmm. Interesting. And I'm sure, Arjun, you must have faced a lot of challenges in the last couple of years with your podcast. Please share a few challenges that you really faced, and I mean, things that you are still facing now.
So challenge is to understand the medium itself. It took me a while because it's a new medium, unlike say a radio or television or YouTube.
Hmm.
Podcasting is a very new medium, and it's a very urban. It has been an urban centric medium for quite some time. Now, of course, it's going to smaller towns and the smaller cities of India, but it's a very recent trend. So to understand the medium was a challenge for me. To find listeners was another challenge because I had to ask my friends to try this thing called podcasting. I
Okay.
suggested a few platforms where they can listen to podcasts, and they started liking it. And then, of course, you plug your own programs and podcasts over there. That's what you do. So, finding listeners has been a challenge. Uh, I'm not really thinking right now about monetizing it because I know podcasting is at an early stage, and I know there are people who are monetizing it, but
Hmm.
I'm trying to be more regular with my content first. So once I get that in place, once I get the rhythm and discipline of my work in place, then I think I'll definitely think about monetizing it. So right now I'm trying to make as many people as possible listen to what I'm doing, and I'm also trying to be more regular with what I'm doing.
Yeah, I guess that's so true when it comes to podcasting and consistency. I mean, if you can be
Definitely.
regular at curating content, making interesting content for your audience, I'm sure slowly and steadily the Indian audience base would definitely grow in India. And, like you said, a lot of your friends who didn't know about podcasting, but when they started listening to a lot of podcasts, they slowly developed this habit of listening to podcasts. That's what is happening, I guess, across India right now, with people now getting access to a lot of these podcasting platforms and apps, and that is where they are trying to find the kind of podcast that they really like, because this is something new. This is not like YouTube where you can binge watch
Yes.
a set of videos one after the other. This is very, very
Yes.
personal, right? It's very personal to you, and the kind of podcast that you would like to listen to eventually.
And
So
Anurag, there are so many options for people also, right? Today, there are so many things that people can do with a given time.
yeah.
OTT platforms are there, YouTube is there, TV, of course, is still there. It's not gone anywhere.
Yep.
So there is so much of distraction. It's very difficult for people to give time to something regularly in a religious
Hmm.
manner. So
So true,
that's
so
also a
true.
problem.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So, Arjun, before we wind up our discussion, uh, any advice you would like to give to your budding podcasters out there going forward in 2021?
Oh yes, it's a new medium. It's an upcoming medium, and we all are, you know, covering this journey together. And there is a lot that we can learn from each other. And there are already some stars in this platform. If you see, in languages, in Hindi, in English, in every language, there are some stars who are emerging, and it's
Yep.
very clear. So there's a lot to learn from each other. There's a need to let go of beliefs that we hold on to, and maybe adapt very easily to the market. So these are things that we'll need to learn. But right now, we are just doing what we want to do. So once market rules and will come in, there might be some adaptation we'll have to do in the coming years. We do not know how it is going to be. But so let's make hay till the sun shines. Let's do some good work. Let's learn from each other. Yeah.
So true. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening out there would get something out of this discussion. So, with that, Arjun, thank you very much for being on the Socially Desi show.
Thank you so much, Anurag. My pleasure.
So next up with me, I have Keshav. Keshav has his podcast, which is called the Unjust Mindcast Show. So hello, Keshav. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anurag. It's been a pleasure having me here with your podcast.
Same here, same here. So Keshav, tell us a bit about your podcast. What is it all about?
It all started on May 2020, April, May. Actually, the research part started on that, and August 5th, only the Anjas Mindcast. Initially, it was Success Frame Show, and then later it evolved as in uh, Anjas Mindcast. It evolved like that.
Okay, okay, that sounds great. So, okay, so let's dive into a few questions that we have prepared for you. So, the first question would be, why did you start your podcast?
See, the basic thing is that I want to motivate others, and I felt that there are many specially able and persons who lack motivation to move forward in life. I had that since I'm already following up, and my sister is also following up that never back down mental. Uh, we just felt that we want to motivate others. Also, being a professional voice actor, I felt that this has to be done.
Yeah, that sounds great. And how is it going so far with your podcast?
So far, so good. It's lovely, blissful, including the voice acting gig. I would say this is actually the best startup because 8 to 9 months of journey in podcasting. I have nearly around 600 followers. I'd never ever have assumed that this is going to be a big hit.
Hmm. So, what exactly do you feel are the top three challenges right now that you're facing with your podcast?
Top three challenges. I would say that content is the main thing. The second is that
Hmm.
the background noises which is there because
Okay.
I have a mic set for my voiceover gigs and have a mic set,
Mhm.
but the background noise is there outside. It's actually pathetic, and it's since I don't have a home studio kind of a setup, I couldn't do anything. So
All right.
the condenser mic grabs all the noises, so it's very difficult.
Mhm.
The third is that if I somewhere some podcast audio or voiceover edit audio is missed, and if I want to add some music to it, it's difficult.
Mhm.
It's actually becoming a little tougher if not used with Anchor or some platforms where we can use it.
All right, all right. So interesting challenges, Keshav, and I'm sure with Socially Desi, we are also trying to help a lot of podcasters, and definitely will like to get in touch with you in future to discuss more about this. So before we sign off, any message that you have for all the budding podcasters out there, especially during these times and with the whole 2020 now coming to a close, what are your views as to going in 2021?
See, my view and perspective to the young guns who are aspiring, just they have to feel the fruit of themselves. They have to do a recording. They have to feel their voice. Once they feel their voice, they can start a podcast.
Perfect, sounds great. Thank you so much, Keshav. Thank you for being on the show today, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, yeah, Anurag. Thank you so much. And I feel privileged to have come in Social Daisy.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much. So next up on the Socially Desi show, we have Meets. She has two podcasts. Okay, so it's interesting to see Meets doing two podcasts. One of her podcasts is called Failure to Success, and the other one is called Rang Birangi Kahaniya. So hello, Meets. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Anurag. Thank you so much for inviting me for your show.
The pleasure is all mine, Meets, or should I call you Meeta? So how did you change your name from Meeta to Meets for the podcast? What was the story behind that?
Story was like I wanted to keep my name, something unique, something, uh, uh, like a catchy kind of a word wherein, people would also, like that. So that was the only reason, nothing like that. I liked that name very much, so I used that. So simply,
Okay, interesting. So
yeah.
tell us about your podcasts.
Okay, my podcast name is Failure to Success. So this is a podcast around wherein I get stories of different people from all over the world. It is story about their
Mhm.
success journeys. Like failure is something which should not be kept. People should not hold how they rose from their failure and how they crossed this journey and finally they reach to the success. It is all about that.
Hmm.
So it revolves about sorry, it revolves around their life and like how they took their failure to further, so that they become very inspiring for the other people as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what about the other podcast?
The other podcast, it's a very interesting story behind that. Basically,
Hmm.
my daughter, she's 7 years old, and I stay
Okay.
in southern part of India. I stay in Bangalore, and basically, you know that the Hindi speaking is a concern. So during this lockdown, I used
Yep.
to take Hindi classes, and I used to narrate
Okay.
stories in a very funny way. So I recorded one of the story for my daughter's friend. She really liked it, and
Hmm.
when her mom, she was listening to the story, she messaged me and she told me that you took some help or something like that. I said no, I did it on my own. So she said you should start a
Hmm.
podcast of your own, because you have those skills and you should start. So I wanted to start with stories podcast, but then I also thought
Okay.
of doing a motivational stuff. So I started with this failure to success also. So that's the story behind
So
children.
Failure to Success is the newer one, or Rang Birangi is the newer podcast?
I started both. Like I started first failure to success, and I think 1 week after that I
Hmm.
started this Rang Birangi Kahaniya.
Okay, interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So, Meets, tell us your top three challenges currently that you're facing with your podcast.
Okay. I as far as my podcast journey has, it's been almost 6 months now. So initially, I
Hmm.
faced few challenges. Like I'm not a tech savvy person, so I don't have that knowledge of editing files. So this was the real challenge, and I had to take help of my husband and my brother, how to do that. And though I'm learning, but still I'm not very good at, that sometimes people do editing and do very fast work. So I'm still learning that. So this is one of the challenge. And the second challenge, I feel that
Hmm.
I have a limited knowledge about marketing of the podcast and how to make it reach to the
Okay.
maximum listeners. So though there are many things on YouTube and all, but then I'm still looking for something concrete wherein the process should not be so tedious, and at one go only it should be distributed
Hmm.
to listeners, or it should be able to reach people. Third challenge, I
Right.
feel that the infrastructure is one challenge, and being a mother of two children and a homemaker, I always look for those silent times at night wherein I have to
Hmm.
wait for all the sounds to subside, where there is no background noise, and so that I can record my podcast in a very good manner. Like there should be no noise like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a challenge for, I guess, every one of
Yeah,
us, something or the other when we are at home.
yeah.
That's one major thing that happens. Even with me, sometimes what happens is I'm in my office room and I'm working, and suddenly somebody would come in and say chai piyoge, and or something else, and I may be in middle of a recording,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see somebody from the other side of the room saying something. So yeah, these are small challenges that I guess we all are facing.
True,
And
true.
thank you so much, Meets, for sharing this, experience with us, your challenges with us. Anything that you would like to share, before we wind up? Anything that you want to share with the budding podcasters out there?
Yeah, I would like to share my podcasting journey, and I would really like to tell that. When I started this journey, I was a little anxious that how will people
Hmm.
respond, or whether I will get good number of listens or not. But as I moved ahead in this journey, and when people started following, it gave me a confidence and a hope that I am going in a right direction. And day by day,
Hmm.
when I used to see that number of listens are increasing, I felt that since the listeners are trusting me, so it's my basic responsibility and a duty that I should deliver them good stuff and stories for them, so that actually they should really feel motivated, elevated, and give them those positive feelings. And I hope in future also I keep on delivering this beautiful stories and content for all my listeners. That's the message I want to give to the
No, I'm
listeners.
sure. I'm sure you will do good.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and definitely. links to your podcast will be shared on the Socially Desi website as well. So thank you, mates. Thank
Yeah,
you for being on the show today.
yeah. Thank you so much, Anurag. Thanks a lot.
Next on the guest list, we have Pallavi. Pallavi's podcast is called Your Digital Marketing Journey. Hello, Pallavi. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anurag.
So, Pallavi, tell our audience about your podcast and what is it all about?
So, as the name implies, it's about your digital marketing journey. So, I give
Mhm.
tips about digital marketing to people who want to grow their business. And these
Okay.
tips can either be employed by themselves, or at least it just provides knowledge to them so that they understand what their digital marketer is doing.
Hmm. So, why did you start a podcast? What was the main reason behind a podcast and not like a YouTube channel?
Well, podcast is the trend right now, especially given the pandemic. And I did want to try
Mhm.
different mediums of reaching out to people. So for me, the podcast is a brand awareness channel. And
Mhm.
I also feel that, the kind of knowledge that I'm giving, just listening to audio might be a way for people to kind of digest that information without having to dedicate too much time to it. So I use it as a knowledge source as well for people who are interested.
Interesting. And how is it going so far for you?
Well, look, I've been doing this for 8 months now, and I've got 25 episodes, which have clocked about 1,500 downloads. So I would say
Okay.
satisfactory. I've seen
Mhm.
a growth trend as I've gone on different channels, and I've seen subscribers who keep coming back and listening to my episodes. So that's very encouraging. So yeah, I think I'm on the right path.
And what do you do generally to engage with your audience?
So I do a lot of social media posts. I break down the information that I give in the podcast into, either a carousel or a video, and that's how I kind of get people to talk about the information in the podcast. And I also have a blog which I share with my email marketing list. So I get feedback from people about the topics that I can cover in the podcast that are coming up. So that's how I
Mhm.
engage my audience.
Interesting. And if we have to talk about, a top three challenges for you with your podcast, what would be these three challenges?
All right. So my podcast is about 5 to 7 minutes, especially if I include an ad. So I think the
Hmm.
biggest challenge for me is to really keep it that length, because I believe that, that's how much time people have. But I don't want it to come across as something very superficial. So when I'm creating the script for my podcast, I make sure that it is an in-depth topic. I do cover it,
Hmm.
in depth, and also I have some takeaways from the podcast. So at the end of the podcast they'll have maybe two or three things that they can go and implement immediately. So keeping my topic short but informative is, I guess, my biggest challenge and an ongoing one.
Okay.
the
All right.
second the second one is because it's a niche podcast, so I'm really targeting small business owners or entrepreneurs who want to own their marketing. So I'm not growing as fast as other podcasts out there. So my topic is very for a very specific audience. So I think that is something that I'll always face, and I just have to get used to the fact that I'll grow at a smaller rate than say other people. So I shouldn't be comparing to other people.
Hmm.
And
Right.
and I think yeah, just because of the topic that I do and the kind of things that I cover and the audience that I'm targeting, I believe that collaboration is also a little bit more difficult for me, because
Hmm.
I feel like I mean, either as a guest, appearing as a guest on someone else's show, there are only a few topics that I can talk about: entrepreneurship or marketing. And then also having people come on my show, again, I'd want to keep it relevant, so I do want them to talk about marketing. So collaborations are a bit of a challenge, and that also means that I'm not growing as quickly. But like I said, I think I'm used to it. I'm happy with the rate that I'm growing, so I don't consider it a big challenge, but I would like to
Hmm.
collaborate more.
Perfect. Sounds good. So, Pallavi, before we wind up, what would be your number one digital marketing tip for a podcaster?
I think definitely breaking down that information that you're giving into in a podcast into different channels. So
Mhm.
whether you're converting it into a YouTube video or writing a blog or talking about it in social media, because getting your podcast out there to other people, there are no paid mediums that work. So best to break it down for different channels and kind of spread yourself across different channels, and that's how you bring more people to listen to your podcast.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. And I'm sure our audience would definitely have this takeaway with them that they have to make sure that their information is getting broken down into different parts and they're portraying their information on various social media platforms. So, with that, thank you, Pallavi, for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Anurag.
So, next up on the Socially Desi show, we have Upasna, and her podcast is called Comeback Minimalist. So, hello, Upasna, welcome to the show.
Hello, Anurag. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So, thank you for joining me on the show today. So, Upasna, first of all, tell our audience about your podcast.
Yeah, my podcast is Comeback Minimalist. It's all about minimalism and various aspects around minimalism. I started
Mm-hmm.
this. I started following minimalism 3 years back, and there weren't much Indians talking or writing about it over the internet. At that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I began by sharing my lifestyle changes on Instagram, but it didn't seem enough. You know.
Right.
So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted my voice to reach to the audience. Yeah. So this is
So,
why I
why a
started my
podcast?
podcast. Yeah, because I want my voice,
Okay.
which I want to be my trademark to reach to the audience.
Okay. Interesting. And how is it going so far with your podcast?
Actually, I begin with solo podcast where I'm the only one
Mm-hmm.
talking to my audience. But now, after being into it
Okay.
for 6 months, I started inviting people over to talk on various aspects of minimalism. So I
Okay.
can say my podcast is growing slowly. I want to share one thing here that I feel
Yep.
one of the most important factor in any field is consistency, and this is where I'm
For
focusing
sure.
right now to be consistent with my podcasting frequency and with my style. Yeah, so we are doing
Interesting.
good.
And what are the three challenges? If I have to ask you, what are the top three challenges that you're facing with your podcast right now?
Hmm. Yeah, the first and foremost challenge I think is to find like-minded audience
Hmm.
because once you find target listeners for your podcast and their specific taste, you're clear about the path, like what to talk about, episode duration, and so on. The
Okay.
second challenge is very personal to me, that is to find the right time to record, as I have two small kids at home.
Okay.
Yeah, third one is the traffic. Because with high competition these days, it's really challenging to get more people listen to your voice amid so many voices
Hmm.
out there.
So true, so true. But your podcast is a very niche podcast which caters to minimalists and the lifestyle that minimalism has. So, do you still feel that you are still facing a lot of issues? Is it specific to the Indian audience or is it
No,
in
no,
general?
it's in general, but
Hmm.
yes, my first target is Indians because I feel Indians are talking less about it. This is why
Yeah, that's
my
true.
Yeah, of course, this is a general thing. We all should follow simple and life with less. With this, when you ask me that if it's a niche podcast, yes, I am still following it, facing the issues for less traffic because, people are more into entertainment and the people want to listen more entertaining things, fun things after a hectic day or stressful day, and not the one which talks about
Yeah,
live
worried.
simply. And this is why I'm still facing the challenge of less traffic.
No, no, I'm sure you will do good, Upasna. And thank you very much for sharing your story, sharing your journey with the Socially Desi audience. And I'm sure, with Socially Desi, we're also trying to help a lot of podcasters, upcoming podcasters. So we'll definitely get in touch with you again. And thank you again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Runrak, for inviting me over to share my podcasting journey. Thank you.
Next on the Socially Desi show, we have Pragun, and her podcast is called Purna Tattva. Hello, Pragun. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anurag. It's really glad to be with you on the show.
It's a pleasure hosting you on the show today, Pragun. So tell us about your podcast and what is it all about?
Well, this is Pragun, and my podcast name is Purna Tattva. Purna Tattva, as you know, is like completeness. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, I'm a blogger also, and my blog name is Pragun Tattva. So I was looking for something which will rhyme with my blog. And so the Purna Tattva was born. And that's it. The journey started with completeness, and a lot of things were there, stories, kisse, kahani. And I just started it with no intention that time of
Mm-hmm.
seriously taking podcasting. But it was a mere pleasure of listening to your own voice, which for which I started the podcasting.
But why a podcast and why not a YouTube channel?
Yeah, that is a really good question. What happened is around last year, I recorded few chapters for kids who are not able to see.
Mm-hmm.
It was for some organization who used to record audio chapters for kids who are blind.
Okay.
And when I did those chapters, I realized that because there are many people who are not able to see, who don't have time to sit or to read. So, podcasting was one platform which gave me the access to record stories or kisse and a lot of things which are accessible to those people. So,
Mm-hmm.
that was my main aim when I started with podcasting. Because, again, if you go to YouTube, I have a YouTube channel also. But
Okay.
then again, when you go for YouTube, you have to sit and watch it. Podcasting gives you the pleasure that you can work, you can drive, you can cook, or you can do anything while listening to the person.
So true. Yeah. And how is it going for you
Yeah.
so far?
So far, I'm really happy with it, and it's growing slowly and steadily. I'm in no rush at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's growing and reaching all the ears which really need to hear me. I'm getting good appreciation and a lot of love I'm getting from people. So yeah, I'm happy with the journey. I'm not able to give it full time, but whatever time I'm giving, I'm happy with it.
That's nice. That's nice. And are there any challenges also that you're facing with your podcast so far?
Um, if you ask particularly only about my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, like the thing is, as I said, that I'm very passionate about Panchatattvas. So I had this when I started with podcasting. Also, I had in my mind stories, be it Hindi, even English, in Marathi. Then I had few write-ups and poems which I had written. So I was looking for sections or categories in the podcast, which
Okay.
I was not able to find. So that is a little challenge that I had to start three podcasts initially, and it was really difficult for me to handle all of them. So the main challenge is like a blogging platform or like any page. If the podcast can have us give us sections, because people like me who are recording in three or four languages, it
Mm-hmm.
gets difficult to log in with Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, and having each and every login separately. So that was one challenge. And again, podcasting, mein what I miss is commenting. We are not
Okay.
able to comment on people like in Anchor. Okay, you can give voice replies, fine. But again, Kuku FM, of course, I'll say they have this commenting option, but other podcasts don't have this commenting option. That thing I really miss on podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there are a lot of choices available. That is a confusion to us. Anchor and Hubhopper and Kuku FM, SoundCloud, ample of choices are there. But okay, yeah, that is still okay. But yeah, challenge will be like having categories for people who want to go for poems as well as stories as well as other things, and commenting, of course.
All right. All right. And any message that you want to send out to all your budding podcasters out there going forward into 2021?
Message. Oh, all I can say is like in India, podcasting certainly is coming up really, really well. And if you feel that your voice can tell and express your emotions and feelings, go ahead, do it. There is nothing more fun when you record your voice and hear it yourself. It's very expressive because I'm a blogger also. When I write, I'm able to express. But when you say, it is more expressive. So all those who are looking forward to it, of course, make Meri Awaaz Hi Pehchan hai. And go ahead, create your podcast, create your voice, spread it as much as you can so people can hear you, your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, your musings. Go for it. Make the next year happen for you, because I have really lived this journey so far, especially in lockdown, because I got
Mm-hmm.
ample of time along with anxiety, along with uncertainties. But podcasting really helped me sail the lockdown, I'll say, because it was fun when you record, you hear your voice, you edit it. the effort you put into podcasting, it's really fun. And again, your voice is very effective. Like if you have a niche or if you have a series, people look forward
Yeah.
to hear you. Like a FM channel, people are looking forward to, okay, ye wala aage kya aega, because like I'm planning to start one series, chai and pie, chai
Hmm.
stories. But again, there is a lot of work behind it. So if people are looking forward to it, have a series like small. So people are looking forward to it. Okay, kal isme kya aega? Like a serial. And the best
Yeah.
thing is you don't have to sit. So that is something good about it. That people are looking forward to hear your voice once again, hear what you want to say. Oh, that's the fun of podcasting.
So true. Thank you very much, Pragun. I guess these tips and advice would definitely help a lot of podcasters out there. So thank you again for being on the show today.
It's completely my pleasure. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
So next on the show we have Jyoti and her podcast Stars of Learning. Hi Jyoti, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, Anurag. Thank you. Thank you for calling me in.
The pleasure is all mine, Jyoti. So tell us a bit about your podcast Stars of Learning.
So, Anurag, Stars of Learning, it features, eminent industry leaders, management experts, authors, educators, entrepreneurs, uh, all vast arena who has in-depth knowledge on the learning journey. Okay, and I
Hmm.
discuss with them on their journey, how they have been successful, what are the kind of challenges they have brought in, what are the solutions they have brought to the table, how they have enabled the business growth, and latest trends, the tools and technology, what has equipped them to be a better themselves, and what kind of a leadership journey they've had in their you know uh, forte. So that's what I look forward with my guest speakers. I interview them on their journey. And the mission of my podcast is to engage, enlighten, and empower the learning fraternity to grow and fast track the learning phase and not reinvent the wheel.
Hmm. Interesting. So when you say engage, enlighten, and empower, how like what can people expect when they come onto their podcast?
See, firstly, let me tell you why I started this podcast, and how that
Hmm.
mission came in place. Okay. Uh, when you want to grow and you want to be success, right? It just can't happen overnight. And we need to have a mindset of a lifelong learning. And I believe
Right.
in it 100%. Okay. And I also felt, I'm being in a learning and development profession. I felt that there is a gap, and not all are aware about these kind of a scenario, which is simple things in life, which is important that you practice on an everyday basis. Like it could be anybody or anyone doing a business or running an organization or any employee, right? You need to
Right.
understand that you need to upskill yourself, right?
Hmm.
Upskill, cross skill, reskill. We talk a lot of this, engaging on the skill growth. You also need to parallel skill. Okay, so that's so important in your learning journey. It's so vital. The reason being, you will be able to keep up to the market changes when you upskill, when you learn on a
Yeah.
continual basis. And every individual, Anurag, when I interact with a student or when I interact with employees, I see that their focus is not there, their goals are not clear, and they are
Hmm.
not ready for change. So that's the thing I want to bring in. They need to have that ability to focus and have their mindset. Change is the constant thing which is going to happen from Darwin's time. We are talking about, change will be there, right? And you need to navigate
Right.
through the challenges. And we also live in this increased pressure, right? And expectations are so high in our lifestyles, and we want to be better, 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 right? And for that, you need to be,
Right.
you want to transform yourself, you need to be agile. And how can you be agile? You have to be strong in your emotional, spiritual, mentally, health, physically. All that matters for a better engagement when you go to the society or in your family. You want to have that connect. You need to have all of these well set. Okay. And I believe that, that knowledge enhances our capability to achieve our goals uh, in a rightful way.
So true, so true. And how is it going for you so far with your podcast?
See, okay, so let me tell you, what is inspiring me, because I meet all these L&D learning professionals, thought leaders, and the kind of a passion they bring in, that strong, learning culture, right? And they have practicing it so long, and there's nothing more inspiring than learning from these experts. Okay, and you can fast track what you are wanting to learn. And uh, when I've had these conversations with these people, right, it has influenced me so much that, you can take some actionable steps to be successful. Okay, so that's what I look in my podcast. So it has helped me grow tremendously. And so far for me, being a podcaster, apart from, few thousand subscribers I've had, I was able to see the larger world, still being in the shell of a corporate world. Okay. So
Right, right.
I have never traveled abroad, and I was able to reach 50 plus countries are listening to me. I'm living in India.
So good, so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And my network has scaled tremendously with like minded people. And yes, I urge to explore more. And by the way, I have to say this. Recently, I got a call from BMW, okay, for their new launch.
Okay.
And they wanted to give me an exclusive demo. And through the
Wow, that's
interaction,
interesting.
I sensed that they were thinking I can buy it. Okay. And at that moment, I felt, that's the brand I have built through this podcast. I'm not there yet, but that's the kind of visibility I've got through this journey. And the journey continues.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And with
No,
huge, huge,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
yeah, that was really inspiring when I was listening to his conversation. But then, yes, I did go and see the demo, everything. But then, yes, that's a part and parcel of life, how you have branded yourself. Okay. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't come that easy. That commitment, consistency, and being persistent in your approach is also very important. With huge, huge gratitude to my mentors, my listeners, and my guests, who have given me so much of knowledge through this podcast journey. When you actually get calls from them, so many messages on the social media platform saying that how it has brought value to them, how it has made a difference, how it has helped them to scale in what they are doing, I find that so rewarding, and it's definitely motivating, Anurag, to continue in this endeavor and to do much more in this journey.
No, so true, so true. And were there any challenges that you faced initially, or some challenges that you're still facing with your podcast?
Yeah, firstly, being in a full-time profession and doing this as a weekend job definitely takes a toll on your regular schedule. Okay, and as a podcaster, I would be looking at how to scale. I want more subscribers, or I want more go reach more listeners. So that's one challenge I would say. And I think everyone in podcasting would be telling, how do I see money in this? Money is not everything. Money do matter. How do we monetize? How do I target? How do I get sponsors? I've not put a hat onto this, But then that's the pain area, Anurag, in the podcasting journey, because many of my fellow team members in the community talk about this. Okay. And editing takes a toll sometimes, so because you can't expect your guest to, not to be on the move. You have to be stationed, or they're, not in a good network. So the voice cracking, some challenges you might start facing. So editing takes a toll. And sometimes we need to learn a lot about the guests also, because if it is your own knowledge
Right.
and you are
Yeah.
doing on a solo, it doesn't take that much. You can put on your hat and you can just start off. But if it is a guest, you are bringing him onto the show, you need to know end to end, and you need to curate the content, and that takes time. And if your content is not good, people will not appreciate you. So these are some of the challenges
So
and
true.
the struggle. Yes, we need to live with that, but we need to learn how to improvise on it.
So true, Jyoti, and I'm sure the community of podcasters in India are growing. And once they listen to this podcast, I'm sure there will be a lot of people who can help, each other out in terms of the kind of challenges that they are facing. Maybe there's something that you can solve for others, and there are things that people can solve for you, and that's how the community builds up and you grow together. So I guess that's the whole motive behind the episode, to also get the community engaged and get them on board and start discussing these kind of issues together on a larger platform. So with that, Jyoti, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Wonderful, Anurag. You're doing a wonderful job on this particular element, because podcast is something very common to outside world, but when in India, very less people know about it. Even an educated person,
Yeah,
we need to explain to them what is podcast. How can they look for this kind of an information? I'm sure your contribution to this would be a value add for the podcasting community. Definitely, thank you for bringing me to this and gathering this insight. And all the very best wishes to
thank
your
you so
venture,
much.
Anurag.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jyoti. Next on the Socially Desi show, we have Dr. Amrita Basu. Dr. Amrita has her podcast called Health Wealth Bridge by Dr. Amrita. Hi, Dr. Amrita. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Anurag.
It's a pleasure to be having you on the show today, Doctor. So, tell us about your podcast.
Actually, I started podcasting back in 2018. I started
Mhm.
discussing health issues, problems that moms had managing healthcare for their families, wellness, education, writing, basically a lot of stuff which was bothering me at that time, and which I felt moms like me needed more help with. So I shared
Oh,
everything that helped me, and also my professional expertise as a doctor through my podcast.
okay.
So that's the main thing I podcast about, my expertise and my experience and the problems and how I solve them.
Okay. So, this podcast is running since 2018.
Yeah, since 2018.
Oh, that's nice. So, how is it going for you so far?
It is actually a good journey, but it started getting more fun in 2020 when I joined Cuckoo. Before that, I felt I
Mhm.
was podcasting in a vacuum and there was no community, because I didn't really find a lot of Indian podcasters in the scene. And
Okay.
so, like, I actually started having more fun in 2020 after joining Cuckoo FM. Before that, I was not really having a lot of fun doing it so much, but I like the concept of reaching more audience and finding a better way of connecting with people, and people who didn't want to read or didn't have the time to read. I felt my podcast was helping me reach those people. So that really made me keep going, even when I felt nobody was maybe listening. Even when I saw the stats on Anchor, that's where my podcast was, hosted. So I was not really feeling very enthusiastic about it, but I think Cuckoo FM was a very good boost to my morale when they approached and asked me to, start doing it with their community and everything. So I felt that, okay, now this is going to be fun, because you like interacting with people who are in the same boat as you are in, and you can learn, and then you know how to go forward, because otherwise in India, like I didn't really find a lot of people who were into podcasting back then. So yes, I am having more fun now, not back then.
Yeah, it's good to have an engaging community, because unless and until you have that camaraderie between podcasters and a platform where you can share your experiences with each other, it becomes boring. It gets very
Yeah,
boring at.
exactly. That's what. Like, I have been blogging since 2014. So I have a very lovely blogging community of friends who are very supportive and everything. But the podcasting thing, I mainly followed international podcasters who were giving out tips about how to do, but they were like really big shots. And in the Indian scene, that's really not yet, the monetization and everything was not really into all that, not so easy in India. So I was feeling kind of at odds, like with
Mhm.
growing and how to get better. So that was my main problem with the podcasting thing.
And if I have to talk about the top three challenges that you are currently facing with your podcast, what would these three be?
My top three problems are the planning of the podcast properly, so that there's a good intro, so that I can have more engaged audience and it is helpful. So the planning of the script especially is a little bit of a challenge for me, because I
Mhm.
want to really kind of work on that. The editing, that's very challenging too, because that's a whole new tech thing. Even though there are lots of help everywhere, it's a learning curve. The more we read and learn, the better it is. So it's very challenging. It's time consuming. So that way, that is another challenge. And the last part, which is very important, that is monetization effectively. So I have not found a lot of resources for that again in India. So yes,
Okay.
these are the three very big challenges I face with my growth of my podcast, I feel.
Interesting, interesting. So, thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much for sharing a lot of information about your podcast and your challenges. I'm sure a lot of the budding podcasters out there would get some sort of a key takeaway from our talk. So, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, next on the Socially Desi show, we have Ayushi. Ayushi has a podcast called Pepperbox Podcast. Hi, Ayushi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Same here, Ayushi. So, Ayushi, tell us about your podcast and what is it all about?
Okay, so basically, I started podcasting during lockdown, right? So I wanted to
Mhm.
make a podcast because internet was being very toxic with some पे, right? So I wanted to have a place where there was like a weird, chill environment. Like if you hear my podcast, it will be like a feel-good conversation on pop culture topics like K-pop, anime, K-dramas, and even underrated artists or just some random baate. And it'll be like a very
Mhm.
relaxed, like it will relax you down. It will make you feel as if your
Okay.
friends are talking. That's it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But why a podcast? Why not something like a YouTube channel?
Okay, first and foremost, I am trying. First and foremost, I was not that confident. Okay, YouTube channel, mein you need equipment, right? You need a good
Mhm.
camera. You need a good editing. This thing. There are many things that to go about it. And I was researching about podcasting, and it so happened that my friend suggested just go for it. And I was like, okay, let me try this at least. And if this works out, if I build a good platform, then I'll go ahead and try YouTube. But first, let me try podcasting and see if it's for me or not. That's why.
And how is it going for you so far?
So far, okay. When I started initially, I had different idea, like three, four different ideas, but now I changed, I rebooted, I learned a few things, and now it's growing at a good pace. Yeah, for a good
Mhm.
podcast. Yeah.
Any challenges? Any challenges that you're facing with your podcast?
Yeah, definitely. See, as my podcast is about conversations, abhi there is lockdown, so I cannot talk to a person. So what happens is many times, should I talk over the net? At times they might be having net problems, so I have to call on the phone. If the phone is not there, then
Mhm.
okay. there might be connectivity issues. Second thing that happens is a lot is like to tell people we come to my podcast or hear my podcast. So convincing people to do a thing has like I have developed my people skills now at this moment, like a lot.
Okay.
I could have not done it in college, but I've done it now. Like to maneuver people, come to my podcast. What do you want to talk about? Okay, can we do this? Collaborating with them. So understanding the person, understanding the mindset, and trying to keep the vibe that I want. Like at times we are like कि शर्म
Mhm.
में we are like कि अच्छा ठीक है मैं post कर देता हूँ, but that quality is not what you want it to be. Then you're like, okay, what do I do? What do I not do? So I learned to be firmer on me. Like, no, this is my podcast. This is my platform. जो होता है, it will reflect on me. So I should be firm over here. कि नहीं मतलब नहीं, हाँ मतलब हाँ. So yeah, that's one thing. So yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So any message that you would like to give to your fellow podcasters going forward in 2021?
Going forward in 2021. Okay, if you are going to start podcasting, then you should understand that promoting is equivalently important, right? As much as podcasting is important, promoting utna hi important rehta hai. So please have good friends to support you at times and have people that can help you put your platform across. And my message is like, okay, this you have to be very patient with yourself. There are many things to learn. So kabhi kabar it might your podcast ka jo number is there, it gives you a good kick. But if it goes low, don't worry. Next podcast acha you'll just learn. Take a positive lesson from it. Because if you think it's going to be a rapid thing कि मैंने start कर दिया और 1 million views मिलेगा, ऐसा नहीं है. It's a slow process, but it is you have to be constant with it. You have to be persistent. That's important. Be persistent. It's hello.
So true, so true. I hope all the podcasters out there will definitely, you know, get
Yeah.
some good feedback from this. And thank you, Ayushi. Thank you for being on the show today.
I hope I have been helpful for you. And thank you so much. This is fun.
So next on the Socially Desi show, we have Lamya and her podcast Poetry Talks. Hi, Lamya. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Anurag. So excited to be part of this episode.
I'm excited as well, Lamya. So tell us about your podcast and what is it? How did you, got started with this?
Okay, so the podcast, I mean, Poetry Talks, like the name suggests, it's all about poetry. And I discuss poetries on different subjects in different languages or discuss the works of different poets on, their works and things like that. So the reason I got started, the reason I started the podcast was that I was a spoken word artist and I used to perform on stages.
Okay.
And during the lockdown, I really missed that. I missed that, connection and interaction with the audience. And I decided that podcast is the next best thing that I can do when I cannot perform live on stage. And another reason is that I always wanted to talk about poetry. I've been writing poetry ever since I was 12 years old. I am interested in poetries in Urdu, Hindi, English, and there was so much that I wanted to share with people. So this podcast was like a great way to, the inspiration to do that kind of a thing.
And how is it going for you so far?
So it's been going great, Anurag. Considering that I started this as a challenge, someone just challenged me ke karna hai to abhi karo kind of a thing. And I said, okay, now I'll show it to you, So considering that, yeah, it has been a very fulfilling experience. Because once you start doing it and once you start getting the feedback, you realize that how many lives you are, reaching out to, how many people are getting affected by what you say and, the appreciation that you get. For example, I did a podcast ode to lost loved ones. And I discussed in that poetries regarding, dealing with the loss of a loved one. And the kind of responses that I have got, people have called me up and cried on the phone that, it was such a cathartic experience listening to your podcast. So the journey has been a great thing. I feel like I found a voice
Mhm.
where I can, convey what I think and I feel through the medium of poetry. And so far, I'm having a great time, really having a great time.
And throughout this journey, were there any challenges that you faced with your podcast?
Yes, quite a few.
Mhm.
See, the first thing is that my podcast is not something that I can do spontaneously. There's a lot of research involved, in searching for the correct poetries and doing research on the background of the poets that I'm writing about or talking about.
Mhm.
So that was one challenge, finding the time to, prepare the podcast. Writing down and gathering the information.
Okay.
Another big challenge is the consistency part, which I think a lot of people face. So even if you target that, okay, we'll record one episode a week or once in 10 days, it still gets challenging.
Right.
So yeah, maintaining that consistency of recording and putting up episodes is one thing which I'm still struggling with. Hopefully, I'll sort it out in the next few months.
Mhm.
And another thing that I personally I feel that I've not been very successful at is promoting my podcast. So of course you do the usual things, posting on the social media and posting on groups, and
Right.
you're passing it on through WhatsApp and things like that. But somewhere down the line, I feel that I haven't been able to do justice in terms of promoting my work.
Okay.
So that is one area where I'm not really satisfied with. So I'm struggling there. I'm trying to find out different ways of promoting the podcast.
Hmm. And the idea behind this whole episode is also to understand that there can be challenges that you are facing, and somebody else may have the answer to it. So I guess through
Correct,
this
correct.
episode, we are also trying to get the community involved in a way that people who may know the solution to your problem can connect with you and give you that solution. So like you said, promoting your podcast is a challenge for you, and doing that research, trying to be regular in doing your podcast is a challenge for you. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of podcasters out there who would have a solution to this problem, and likewise, there can be things that you can solve for a lot of other podcasters as well. So before we wind up today's episode, Lamia, anything that you would like to share with your fellow podcasters going forward into 2021?
I would just like to say one thing, that just stick to it.
Mhm.
Because I know that is the biggest struggle. You record a few episodes and then life takes over and there is so much work there. And, the podcast keeps on getting thrown into the background, into the to-do list of the next day. So I would just like to say that everybody who's like me, who's enjoying the journey, just keep doing it. I think we shouldn't bother about the numbers, the number of listeners, the number of plays. I think we should forget all that and just keep on doing the work. And I feel that eventually will get us wherever each person wants to get, through their podcast.
Wonderful, wonderful advice, Lamia. And with that, thank you. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Anurag. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that wraps it up for today, folks. If you liked the episode, give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and let's go viral. I'm sure you must have gained a lot of knowledge and insights about how podcasters work and what's their journey like and what sort of challenges they are facing in their current podcasts. And I'm sure the podcasting community who's listening to us would have gained a lot more insights as to how they can build their own podcasts, how they can grow their own podcasts. And as Socially Desi, we are also working towards helping other podcasters, new and upcoming artists to feature themselves on the platform, as well as if you need any help from Socially Desi, we are always here to help you out. Remember, our weekly podcast features episodes on personal growth, mental health, relationships, business and entrepreneurship, and health and fitness. We would love to have all the guests today again in the future to discuss more about their journey, more about podcasting, and just have a lot of fun on the episode. So guys, don't forget to check out sociallydesi.com. And before I sign off, remember, life is black and white and everything in between.